Welcome back to OLC Live. We're here at the OLC Innovate 18 in Nashville, Tennessee at the beautiful Opryland. I'm here with conference co-chair for the program, conference program co-chair, Clark Shah-Nelson. And I just want to talk to you about what's going on this year. How did you come up with the ideas for the program this year? What do you see as being different and exciting this year, and what's going well?
Yeah, Ben and I, started off by just kind of looking at last year's program and retooling a few of the names and so on. We definitely wanted to up the, visibility and the style of the conversations, not presentations type presentations or conversations, if you will. And we got a lot of great submissions for that. I feel like there are a lot more of that type of session this year. A lot of sessions that I've been to that are literally, there's no slides, just people sitting around a table having a great conversation. Small groups having great conversations and so on. We renamed some of the tracks, like, the workforce continuum, and got a lot of great submissions and all the different tracks. Let's see, what are some of the other, like the whole keynotes, have been, I think, really well received so far. Well, there's only been one so far, so we have two more to go. Yeah. But I love the way that Angela and Jess came up with, the planning of those in terms of, having a nice, easygoing one in the evening, on the first day, and then kind of spacing them out, and then ending with Ruha Benjamin on Friday morning. So I'm pretty excited about that. They were saying that I guess Twitter was doing really well during the keynote yesterday. It was kind of a lot of great comments. I haven't even had a chance to look yet, but I'll be curious to see some of those. Yeah,
Keegan Longwheeler and I have had a collector going the entire conference, and so we'll be able to do some analysis on it at the end and just see where people were, what they were talking about, maybe do some word cloud stuff and see what the connections are. Mm-hmm. But the traffic's been heavy on it, and we set it up to collect 20,000 tweets about the conference, and I'm a little worried that we're going to trip over that. So it'll be interesting. Mm-hmm. I've only gotten to attend a couple of sessions because I've been in here. Have you been able to see anything? Is there anything really exciting that you enjoyed?
I attended the Leadership Network, which was an early pre-conference type session. It was really a lot of excellent information and good sharing and conversations with colleagues there. And I also went to another pre-conference session on accessibility and universal for design for learning, which is another area that I think has kind of exploded this year in terms of the submissions and the amount of coverage at the conference. And that was really fantastic as well. And yeah, I've been to some great sessions. The posters are in this beautiful room with this ginormous chandelier. It's just like awesome, excellent poster presentation or, emerging ideas. Yeah. I just feel like there's the energy and the excitement is really, really up, And not to mention the engagement, the game night. I mean, the game nights are phenomenal, the evening campfire gatherings.
Yeah, we've really had a good time. We had knitting on, I guess, Tuesday night, and then board game night on Wednesday. And then I think tonight is basically diversity and inclusion night. There's some, do you remember what the acronym for that was?
IDEA.
Yeah. But yeah, we've had a really good time. One of the things that we were talking about earlier and that I find interesting is that you're a little bit trapped in Opryland. It's such a big hotel that people aren't really walking off campus. But because of that, everyone's sort of milling around, talking in the hallways, participating in these evening events in gardens that are inside the hotel. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that level of energy is in some cases trapped, but I think it's reverberating off the walls.
And everyone's getting their steps in, their Fitbits and everything, because it's a lot of distance to some of the places, but it's been no problem getting all the exercise in every day. It took me about, I think, 3 days until I could figure out the shortest path between here and my room so that I could actually go, change my shoes or whatever, and I was going the wrong way, and I realized that I was really going like a long way out of the way,
You
until I
enter your
actually-
third garden on the way to your
Yeah,
room.
yeah.
I think there must be a better path.
Very confusing, but now I finally am getting the hang of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, just in time to
yeah,
wrap up.
but and back to those evening gatherings. I mean, they've been full. That Christine, the conference director, has just been amazing in terms of the last night there was a spread of all this like classic candy like Laffy Taffy and those big huge pixie sticks.
Yeah.
And
I had a box of Swedish fish.
Boxes of Swedish. I mean, the night before were these s'mores that you actually cooked over an open flame, and it was like this big huge marshmallow.
Yeah.
I mean, it just adds that extra touch. When you put that on top of the great conversations with people and the socialization and the networking and the just collaborating and communicating and connecting with everyone.
Yeah.
It just makes for a really great energy.
Yeah, and I've enjoyed this sort of like camp type theme of the whole thing, the getaway camp and the button exchange and the swaps and the Ranger program. And you helped a little bit with the sort of design and idea of the Ranger program. Can you tell people a little bit about what's going on with that and the idea?
Yeah, so the Ranger program was essentially modeled after the Accelerate program we did, which was called Field Guides. But the idea is the same, that it's mostly geared for new people to the conference to help them feel a little bit at ease, to find their way around, to know there are people that they can flag down if they have a question or if they need help finding a room or something. But also to, we always have like an opening kickoff meeting where they get to sit at a round table and discuss with other people around topics they're interested in and meet people. So a lot of times people come to the conference, maybe it's their first time, maybe they only know one or two other people or nobody even at the conference. And so it gives them the opportunity to meet people and to connect. And then when you see them around later at the conference, you have that connection. And then on top of that, we had these engagement maps, which were modeled after, I think those kind of came about at last year's Innovate conference. I think the brainchild of Jessica. And we've been utilizing those as well for as part of the Ranger program to help people who maybe are a little overwhelmed with the program and have an interest in a particular area like instructional design or universal design for learning or teaching or blended learning, and so on and so forth. So what we did was have somebody go through the program and curate these engagement maps so that basically at every session time during each day, there's a recommended, if your role as instructional designer and you're really interested mostly in instructional design stuff, there's a curated set of recommended sessions for that type of role. So the engagement maps, the kickoff lunch, the Ranger station where you can stop by and talk to a Ranger and ask questions. And then I guess the final piece of that is the Slack channel. Yeah. The Slack team where, I think there are over, last time I looked, there were maybe 115 people in the Slack team that have joined up. And it's not extremely busy, but it does provide another space where people can connect individually or in groups because of the channels that are in there for the same type of topics: universal design, instructional design, diversity and inclusion, blended learning, and so on. And so it gives a place for people to share ideas, share links to resources, articles, sessions, and so on, or even just connect, like, hey, I'm going out to, Hattie B's for hot chicken. Anybody want to go along?
Yeah, that's how I used it. I got on the Slack channel last year and I met a lot of people just to go out to dinner in New Orleans. And then again this year with just building that sense of community. And I think that's one of the great things about the Ranger program is that it helps ease people in who are in their first year. And then we had our squad goals presentation yesterday. And that was very much the message of just, if you're here in your first year, if you're sort of new to being an ID in general, if you're in the first few years of your job, this conference does a lot programmatically to try to help people join our community as a whole. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a great space for people who are working in ID and ed tech to come and learn and meet a network of people who will support you.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize when they first get started that, for example, I mean, the different layers and levels of things going on. So, for example, we all know about attending, right? And a lot of my first one I attended, and then I realized like, oh, I want to present next time. So I did a submission, and next time around I was able to present. And then, but there are also all these other layers that a lot of times people don't know about in terms of getting involved and being more connected to the community. So for example, there are reviewers who review all of the session proposals. You know, and all of these are volunteers essentially to volunteer a little bit of time, you know, for the online learning community. But like peer reviewers for the sessions, track chairs who are actually kind of helping, you know, manage the peer reviewers and select what's going to go into the program and so on. So those are very important roles that always need people. And there are, okay, peer reviewers, track chairs, presenters, obviously. Oh, there are session chairs who are in each session to beat people, and, you know, which takes attendance or whatever. So they have an idea of how many people go to sessions. And for the virtual sessions, there are the session chairs who interact with the virtual audience on the chat and so on. And then there are also the steering committee members who sometimes are just people with a particular interest. Sometimes, like the engagement committee will have chairs like the engagement co-chairs, but then also there'll be a few people on the committee who are people who are going to help, like the field guide program or the ranger program, people who are going to help make that happen, dedicate a little bit of time. So we had a whole range of, or a whole bunch of rangers who are people who'd been to the conference before who said, yeah, I have some experience with this. I can help people get used to where things are and feel comfortable and ask any questions they need to. And so rangers are volunteers and the chairs. And then there are the, you know, the program co-chairs and the conference co-chairs. And there's just all these levels of things you can do to get involved. And a lot of times they sort of build on each other. So, you know, I would say it's not entirely hierarchical, but one of the ways, you know, when you you know, say, hey, I'd like to be a peer reviewer, that's, you know, getting started. And then a lot of times, you know, from there you could say, oh, you know, I'd really be interested in helping with engagement or whatever, maybe get on the committee and so on. So it's a lot of ways that people can really build on that.
Yeah, and for me, I started off in the innovation lab, working with the game design space, and then working more broadly with the entire innovation lab last year, and then this year with engagement. I think yours is somewhat similar, working in the test kitchen at Accelerate and sort of meeting everyone there, and then continuing to collaborate with them outside of OLC and within OLC in terms of organizing in the future. So have there been sort of products of that? Have there been papers and work that you've done outside the conference?
Yeah, well, first, that's exactly right, because you know, after I was a presenter, I also was a reviewer and then eventually a track chair. And then the technology test kitchen came along, and I got involved with that right away when it first started. And as was, you know, and that's another place I didn't even mention. There's the whole technology test kitchen and the innovation lab where there are always volunteers. It takes a whole mess of people to make this all happen, you know. So we're in the innovation lab, there are like about 10 people that help out there. Same with the technology test kitchen. And that's actually where I met Ben Scragg, I met Amanda, I met Angela Gunder, I met Jessica Knott. All of these folks I met through the Technology Test Kitchen, and which is just a wonderful place to have great conversations and help people with instructional design issues and so on. And you know, I forget exactly how it happened, but essentially a bunch of us met in the Technology Test Kitchen, and we started talking about, oh, we should write a paper or whatever. And, you know, somebody gets a website set up and somebody sets up a Google Doc folder. And next thing you know, we have a Google Doc going. And then next thing you know, we start up a regular, like Friday morning, like 30-minute, or, you know, Friday late afternoon or whatever, 30-minute meeting that you can join if you're available and not if you're not. And that way it gives a regular type possibility for people to connect and share ideas. And then somebody says, oh, why don't we write a little article for this magazine or whatever? And so they'll set up a Google Doc and work on that article. So out of that collaboration, which is part of what we were talking about in the squad goals conversation yesterday, we had a paper, a chapter come out of that. Several, I would say at least several to many sessions at various conferences have resulted from that collaboration. And so it's a great way to start a network of people and, and take it and turn it into a very productive kind of a productive group.
Yeah. One of the things I appreciated from the presentation yesterday was that Ben Scragg was saying a great way to start a conversation is just asking for directions, asking for help. And I think for me, part of the experience of being in the innovation lab, and I think it's similarly with Test Kitchen, is that's sort of what we're encouraging people to come in and do, is say, I'm trying out this thing at my school and I could use some direction, I could use some help. And I think that sets up such a natural conversation and such a natural possibility for collaboration that it's easy to meet people and then keep working on things together afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this whole conference, I think you've done a fantastic job of sort of taking that idea and expanding it across the whole conference and our conversations and our structure everywhere.
Thanks. I mean, I've been really inspired by so much by, like I was saying, I've been going to these conferences more or less since like 2007. Since it was the Sloan Consortium in Orlando at the Carib Hotel or whatever. I mean, I couldn't even begin to count the number of ideas that I've had that I've taken back to put into use in my institutions. I've been in three institutions along that path. And I was with SUNY, a whole bunch of ideas I got from the conferences I took to SUNY, to Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. A whole bunch of stuff that I would bring back there and utilize. And now with the University of Maryland School of Social Work, it just continues. Like you see what's going on in these other schools about faculty development, about universal design, accessibility, ways to help change management, leadership, and administration of online programs. And you get to see how people are doing the same things in different ways in different schools and so on. And it's just a really rich way to grow and learn. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think being at the bigger schools, we're lucky that we're often surrounded by other IDs and other ed tech people and other people to bounce ideas off of. But especially in community colleges and in smaller colleges, you might be the only ID, in your department. You might be the only type of person in your department. And so there have been a lot of conversations here of, we're struggling with this problem, and just hearing, well, yeah, we struggled with that too, and here's an idea, or we can talk about it. And so, just building that environment for people to come in and meet and share is fantastic.
It's a very important point you make, because there are so many shops out there where literally there is one person. When I was at SUNY, it was just me doing online learning, and then eventually I had an assistant. There were two of us, and then, but it'd be interesting to see the breakdown of all the people, 1,200 people attending. How many of them are in 1 or 2 person shops, as opposed to like 30, 40 person shops and so on, or how that spread looks. I'm really interested in I don't know, all the sort of data of the conference as well, like how many sessions we got proposed in all the different tracks and all the different types of sessions, and how that all kind of rolls out and the ones that people are most interested in and best attended and so on. And of course, like how the evaluations are for all of the sessions. I just think it's so interesting to see what all that data can tell us.
Yeah, I think even year to year, looking at, here were the big topics of this year, but here were topics that started to emerge, and then we saw those explode in the next, in the fall or in the next spring, of what are people interested in. And I agree. I think universal design and that idea of accessibility seems to be something that's going to be here for at least the next few years, and it's something that we're all still struggling with. It's something that there are a few solutions, but I think most people here are saying, we're working on this right now. And so it's very much in progress. So
Definitely.
yeah, I've been getting a lot of energy. I agree. I just get a lot of great ideas that I can take back, and then people I can follow up with on how do I implement this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's extremely helpful.
Yeah. So, but is there anything that you're presenting on? Is there anything that you're working on that you're excited about?
So I've been kind of interested really lately a lot in sort of well, I guess project management and communication collaboration and the way that happens in the workforce, the workplace, because you see so much difference in the cultures of various organizations. And for example, I did a session yesterday about the evolution of workforce, project management, and so on, and how, we had typewriters for a long period of time, and then we started getting computers, and email came in, I guess, about the time when I started teaching over the TV in Denver in like 90, for me, around 94 or something like that. And so that's what, 2-3 decades ago or whatever. So that's been the primary paradigm for an extremely long amount of time now, email and attachments and so on. And so, you still find a lot of organizations where that's still the primary paradigm. I did a presentation for an OLC Collaborate in Pittsburgh back in February, and I did a somewhat similar presentation and added a poll of all of the attendees, and there were around 100 or so, about what's the primary communication tool in your group, your organization? Is it telephone, email? Is it a project management system? Is it a chat system like Slack or HipChat or Microsoft Teams? I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was, I think, 90% email, And so, but what we're seeing is a shift. And I've read, I've been I started a doctoral program in evidence-based management in the fall. And so I've been doing a lot more like literature reading and looking into research, and some of the, I've been finding really interesting things about virtual teams and about these technologies and communications. And, a couple of papers I found were, basically saying that already in a lot of global companies or global organizations, chat like Slack and HipChat has replaced email as the primary paradigm for communication, and are, sort of, I guess, prognosticating that in the next 10 years, it's basically going to replace email for a majority of organizations or whatever. Because, one of the points I made in my session was that the thing about email is it's not very transparent. Sure, you can forward your emails to somebody, but how many of you have, when you got your position, if you took it over from somebody else, how many of you received their username and password to get all the knowledge that's in their email, from your predecessor? And usually it's none. And in many organizations, there's very little documentation about how people do their jobs and the why and how and everything. And so how do we get all that knowledge that we share in our work team and our organization? And how do we make sure that we're really maximizing the potential of that knowledge, that we're sharing it in a way that it's going to live beyond our tenure? When I move on, whether in my last couple of jobs, it's been 5 years that I've stayed there and then moved on. And then how do I make sure that some of this is kept in a way that the next person who comes in is going to not just be like, what are we doing? And what is everything? Yeah. So, and a great way to do that is a wiki. So like at SUNY, we started up a Confluence wiki. So we could just start documenting everything there. How do we do things? How much do we do things? And, why do we do them this way? And you can put all that information in there and have comments back and forth. And that makes a much more transparent place to store knowledge about what you're doing. And the same thing with using something like Slack or Teams, that you have these channels that, will store your conversations, and they're searchable, but you can add people into the channels that need that information down the road, and then they can search for it and find it and so on.
And it's really interesting. I'm leading a project where we're doing this award show in a month, and I was looking back at the emails that we've been sending last year, and literally just control Fing through my own emails to find the resources, and it was exactly that same set of problems as the first person who had set this program up has left the university. I don't have their emails, and so this is the third time we've run this project, and yet I'm sort of having to make it up each time, and it's because of that lack of documentation. And so this time I'm trying to record everything I'm doing and write it all down. But we've also during that time made the transition to Slack, and so it's all getting better. But yeah, it takes that time and effort and a lot of energy into documenting it all.
Yeah, but, I mean, in one of the researches, the articles I was reading was basically saying that, you know, increasing the knowledge sharing is helpful for innovation. It's helpful for building capacity in your organization. And so, you know, you can directly tie these types of, or this type of evolution or movement of moving into more transparent communication, knowledge storing systems to directly to innovation and capacity.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, I think even internally, even for a single user, I've been working a little bit on digital humanities projects where you're doing similar types of work, but with slightly different data sets. So you might take the example of looking at voter data across different states. And so you want to generate a map of voter data for the state of Virginia, but then later you want to do the same thing for the state of Texas. You can do each thing separately and recreate the work each time, but if you can create a process that generates the map just by putting in the data set, then you can create 50 maps very easily rather than 50 maps individually one at a time. And so just thinking about your process so that it's repeatable. In ID, how do you make that process repeatable for each class that you're going through, or for a program for each of the classes that's being developed? It's painful to do it up front, but it saves so much time down the road.
Definitely, yeah. Make it more scalable of it, you know, which is another big thing in our industry, I would say, is that everything we're doing with one person or two people, you know, I hardly know of very many places that they're trimming down, you know. I mean, online learning has just been growing and growing. And so the teams are getting bigger and bigger is the trend, I would say, by and large. And it's really important.
Yeah, the onboarding process, that knowledge sharing.
Yeah, and you know, another aspect of that, like I mentioned, is project management. So, you know, a lot of shops are still using spreadsheets and so on to track things. But eventually, once you get a bigger and bigger and bigger team, you're looking at everybody's data in that spreadsheet, and it gets harder and harder to sift it down to just your data. You know, so one of the things I've been excited about is something like Atlassian Jira, where you can do custom fields for anything you want to track. So if I want to track the number of hybrid courses versus blended versus face-to-face or whatever, that's a data point that I can put in my, say, Jira field, so that every course I work on, I have that data point. I have a status of the course, what stage it's in, whether it's pre-production or running or post-production or not running or whatever. So all of these are data points. And then, you know, like that software will just produce automatically dashboards. It'll show you, here are all the people and how much they're working on. And here are all the things you were doing last year and how, you know, you did this many blended courses and this many online courses. And so then you've got all this evidence that you can use to say, hey, we just grew 150% in the amount we were doing. Now maybe we can justify getting another instructional designer on our team and that type of thing. And that's really the advantage to me of something like Jira over some of the project management systems that are great and they're easy to use and they're much better than, say, a spreadsheet and email. But like Basecamp, for example, very good at what it does, but it doesn't really allow you to make those unique custom fields that you can then generate these dashboards and stuff around that are all your own fields, you know. But then again, it's something you can use right out of the box, which unlike, you know, with Jira, you'd have to do a lot of configuration to make it work all like that.
Yeah, and it's how close do you go back down to a raw database where you're really customizing it for your group versus, something that's much more turnkey and maybe easier to pick up. I think these are the struggles of all programs. Maybe for smaller programs, if they go ahead and, you know, take the plunge now, it's something that'll save them some time later. For us bigger programs, something that will, you know, spend a good bit of time getting into.
Definitely, as you get larger and larger groups, you know, you start talking about 7, 10 instructional designers, and also working with tech writers and audio editors and audio producers and web developers, and you get all these teams, collaborating to make this stuff. Something like a project management software, it's a lot easier to say, have a workflow that says, okay, the ID hands it off to the tech writer, and the tech writer does his or her thing and hands it off to the web developer. And then you've got all the communications right there. You've got the time logged on the project right there. You've got, all the files if you want. And then all the status information that'll feed into the dashboards and everything. Good stuff.
Yeah, these are exactly the challenges we're facing right now. So yeah, I'm just absorbing all of this. But I think we've got to wrap up. What we're going to be doing at the in the next half hour or so is we're going to go down to the innovation lab, and Dave Goodrich is going to be bringing us into that space, interviewing some people that are hanging out around the innovation lab, around the vendor hall, and just around campus in general. So thank you very much to Clark for joining us, and we'll kick it over to Dave here in a few minutes, and please stick around. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.